The term cognitive dissonance is fairly well known among those who regularly engage in open debates and intellectual discourse. However, despite its common usage, many people don't fully understand the concept or understand the origins and impact made by the man who coined the term and the theory behind it. Hi, I'm R.
And I'm Jay.
And in this video, we're going to talk about Leon Festinger's theory of cognitive dissonance. Let's get started. In 1959, Leon Festinger published his work on a theory of cognitive dissonance. This theory helps explain human behavior by describing the internal thought processes which could lead to particular behaviors, and is described as a theory of cognition in behavioral psychology. This was a paradigm shift in the field of social psychology because prior to this, behaviorism was the standard philosophy among social psychologists. Behaviorism is an approach to understanding the behavior of animals and humans by examining an organism's response to stimuli found in the environment, explaining behaviors as learned responses to stimuli resulting from reward and punishment outcomes. This differs to the approach of cognitive psychologists who attempt to explain behavioral outcomes as processes determined by internal structures of the brain attempting to navigate through the environment. When first published, Festinger's theory met significant criticism from behaviorists who believed external behaviors were the only reliable measure in the field of psychology. Many psychologists of the time viewed cognition as a temperamental and unscientific concept. Because neuroscience was in relative infancy at the time Festinger released his theory, these criticisms were perfectly reasonable, though possibly invalid, as the predictive power of Festinger's theory proved to be quite substantial. And as neuroscience has progressed and our understanding of the human brain has improved, the concept of cognition as a predictor for human behavior has gained significantly more weight.
So, what is cognitive dissonance theory? Simply put, cognitive dissonance theory states that if a person holds two incompatible beliefs or behaves in a way which is incompatible with a currently held belief, they will experience emotional discomfort referred to as dissonance. This discomfort pressures the person to resolve that internal inconsistency as soon as possible, which can be achieved in a few different ways. Festinger provides several ways in which a person could be expected to behave from this hypothesis. To resolve feelings of dissonance, a person may change their cognition, which is to say, they may change the way they think about something or change their belief altogether. They may change their actions or behaviors to coincide with their beliefs, or the person may require selective information which justifies the previous behavior. Let's have a look at an example to better understand the theory. If a person has a habit of smoking cigarettes, a behavior, but knows that smoking is unhealthy, a cognition, the person may justify this behavior by altering their cognition. For example, smoking is only bad for pack-a-day smokers. I don't smoke that much, so it's okay. The person may now perceive the behavior as compatible with their new understanding or new cognition. The behavior can now coexist with the understanding that it is harmful because the subject has adjusted their cognition to compensate. The smoker could also reduce their dissonance in other ways, such as the addition of new information which balances the effects of smoking. For example, I read somewhere that smoking reduces stress, and stress is far more harmful for your health. Or another way to achieve compatibility might be actually just stop smoking. But given the wide range of potential paths a person could take to resolve feelings of dissonance, it may seem like this theory has a very limited predictive power. But there is more to this theory than we can apply, which narrows down the potential behaviors we might expect a person to make. Firstly, people are likely to choose a path which is the simplest and removes feelings of dissonance the fastest. Secondly, they will likely avoid any decisions which may add or threaten to add feelings of dissonance. This seems like a fairly easy concept to understand, but it explains a surprisingly large amount of human behaviors. For instance, have a think about a decision you have made recently or in the past, and what thoughts came to mind when you were making the decision. It might be something as simple as deciding whether or not you should go to the gym. Likely, you will battle with an uneasy feeling knowing that you should exercise to be healthy, but don't have the energy or motivation to do it. When battling with this feeling, you might think to yourself, I know I should go, but I don't have the time. I don't want to be sore tomorrow, or it's more important that I spend time with the kids. Whatever way you may justify the decision, there will be an instance of dissonance that you feel, and this will no doubt influence your decision and overall behavior. It's interesting in theory, but is there any evidence to support the theory? The theory first arose from a participant observation study where Festinger investigated the behavior of cultists who believed a flood would destroy the earth in their lifetime. Some dedicated members of the cult gave up their lives and homes for the cult with the belief that the coming apocalypse would mean they had no need for material possessions or to invest in their future. When the apocalypse did not eventuate, many members of the cult realized their mistake and accepted the harsh reality that they were fooled. However, the cult members who invested themselves fully into the cult and gave up their homes and belongings reacted differently. When faced with the option of acknowledging they were wrong or doubling down on their beliefs, the cultists decided to keep playing, convincing themselves and telling others that they were right all along but had been saved because of their faith. This fact helps shape the theory of cognitive dissonance by highlighting people's tendency to resolve dissonance in the most efficient way. The more a person invests their cognitive resources and behaviors into one area, the more effort that is required to change those cognitions and behaviors. A person who has sold their home and now works for the cult organization will need to make significant changes to their entire lifestyle when the realization comes that they have been duped. Alternatively, that person could continue their behavior and make minor alterations to their beliefs with significantly less effort. It was observations like this that led Festinger to develop the theory of cognitive dissonance, as well as his groundbreaking experiment which would give evidence to the theory.
The first study to explore the theory of cognitive dissonance was published in 1959 by Festinger and Carl Smith, titled Cognitive Consequences of Forced Compliance. The experiment was designed not only to test the hypothesis that cognitive dissonance will influence a person's behavior, but also whether behavior is influenced by reward, which was the staple of behaviorist psychology at the time of the experiment. To truly support the hypothesis, the result of the experiment had to show that reward incentive is not a better predictor of behavior than feelings of dissonance. To achieve this, Festinger and Carl Smith created two test groups along with a control group. In all groups, subjects were asked to perform a series of monotonous tasks, such as filling and emptying a tray with wire spools and turning square pegs in 90-degree turns for a total of 1 hour. All subject groups performed the same tasks. However, the two test groups were asked to stay and explain the test to a new subject who was in fact a member of the experimental team. The test groups were asked to explain the task and also try to convince the new subject that the task was enjoyable, stimulating and not at all boring. One group was offered $1 for their time, while the other test group was offered $20. Given that each group was asked to lie and convince someone else that the experiment was exciting and enjoyable, but one group was given significantly more money to do so, we would expect from a behaviourist perspective that the group who was paid more should be more susceptible to viewing the task as enjoyable than the group that were only paid $1. But the results were very different. Significantly more subjects from the $1 group altered their view of the task to a more positive one after they were asked to convince someone else that it was enjoyable. This is what we would expect to see if cognitive dissonance were true. If we apply the concepts of cognitive dissonance, we would expect to see the subjects in the $1 group to reconcile their feelings of dissonance they were forced to undergo when asked to lie to someone else. The group who is paid a reasonable sum for their time has no need to reconcile feelings of dissonance, as they can justify the experience easily with the knowledge that they were paid to do so. So when they were asked at the very end of the experiment if they found the tasks enjoyable, they answered no very consistently. The other group, however, could not use the financial payoff as easy justification for performing the tasks and lying to someone else about them. Instead, we saw what Festinger predicted in his theory. Many of the individuals changed their beliefs to match their actions in order to reduce feelings of dissonance, and as such reported the task to be more enjoyable. More recent studies using modern equipment like functional MRIs have observed the brain's regions activated as a result of cognitive dissonance, and even used brain activation to predict people's decisions with a high degree of accuracy. This was demonstrated in a 2009 study published in Nature, which showed cognitive dissonance engaged the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula of the brain. Activity in these regions was shown to be a very strong predictor of a person's attitude change under experimental conditions. These more advanced studies serve to strengthen Festinger's theory.
So how can we apply this in everyday life? It doesn't matter if you're applying the theory of cognitive dissonance to yourself or someone else. The important thing to remember is these 3 points. Number 1, an inconsistency between an action and a belief will bring about feelings of dissonance. Number 2, feelings of dissonance can be reconciled in 3 main ways: a change of belief, a change of action, or a change of perception of the action. And number 3, the easiest path to achieving a reduction in dissonance will be the most likely path chosen. It's important to note that this may lead to some unusual behaviors that might seem like they require great effort and are not in line with the path of least resistance. But dissonance simply guides a person on the easiest path away from dissonance, which can lead a person to make serious changes in their life from very small steps. For example, a young man may see a military recruitment ad which states that only real men have what it takes to become a Marine. If his self-perception is one of manliness and he has a high regard for the military, it may be a very small step for him to change his life goals towards a career in the military. So while this seems like a large change, in regards to resolving the dissonance, it is very small. If we take this and apply it to how members of the public interpret scientific findings, this concept commonly manifests itself in a denial of evidence. For many people, it is easier to change their perception of the actions they take rather than change their beliefs or the actions which they likely perform on a regular basis. This results in individuals having beliefs that are contrary to the body of scientific evidence, and instead of changing their beliefs or actions to match that evidence, they will attempt to discredit the entire field of science by one or more of a myriad of possible ways, such as claiming there is a conspiracy or that they know better than the experts. This is because it's easier to alleviate their dissonance by claiming the body of knowledge is wrong, rather than to actually embrace the fact that they were the ones who were mistaken, forcing a change in their long-held beliefs or regular behavior. This archetype fits many groups of people with a great deal of prominence on the internet. Let's see how many you can all come up with in the comments. State the group, their beliefs, and how they express their cognitive dissonance. Or if you're feeling brave enough, tell us an example of how cognitive dissonance might have affected your own decisions. We're excited to see how many you guys can come up with. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you really want to support us, you can check out our Patreon page. Links in the description.